So here's a topic that I really wanted to hit on because I think it's important for black people to understand why we are so violent and what our relationship to violence looks like. Not really sure if people understand how our relationships with our children affect how they grow up. Now, when I say that, I don't mean in the simplest of terms. I mean in the deepest, most communicative sense. I mean that the relationships we have with our children are much more important than anything else in this world. How we treat our children affects society as a whole. Because that old song that Whitney Houston sang, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. It may seem very romantic or romanticized, but she's right. That song is right because the handling of our children, and especially black children, is what is the crux of this violent issue in our communities. And see, what we seem to do is project. We project our fear of ourselves, of our violent culture onto other people, other groups, like the cops and white people and white privilege. But see, that's too easy. It's way too easy to blame others. Now, I'd be silly to say that white people don't have part of the blame, but the onus is not theirs. It's our issue. What we must do is change the relationship that we have with our children and put them first. First off, in order to have better children and create a better culture for them, we must stop beating our children. Now, I know you're going to be like, who is this guy to tell me how to raise my kids? I mean, I'm not telling you how to raise your kids. I'm making a plea, an argument, if you will. So that you understand that hitting your kids, beating your kids, has consequences that cause ripples throughout not only their lives, but the country and the culture. The more you hit your kids, the more violent they will be. Now, I don't know if anyone has done any research on the warrior gene, but it seems that black people have much more of the warrior gene than any race on the planet. And trauma itself, when experienced, activates that gene very easily. And in our culture, we you know hitting our kids is excused. It's promoted. It is pretty much forgiven. It's part of how we raise kids, how black people raise kids, and how some other people within society raise their kids as well. But the studies have shown that hitting kids in any way and certain methods of discipline cause them irreparable harm in the long run. And if you see, mostly, and this is across the board, families that are poor are the ones that consistently hit their kids. And it's usually the families that are poor, the communities that are poorer, that have the most violence. So if you look at our community, at the black community, we have a 73% out of wedlock rate, which brings children into homes that don't have a father, or sometimes they don't have a mother, but mostly it's the father that's absent. The father is a disciplinarian, usually. However, with the father missing, it leaves the woman to raise the kids and be the disciplinarian as well. A lot of times this leaves women very angry, and they can lash out at children in anger. And you see this. I'm not just saying this. This is something that's an actual fact. I mean, if you can go to almost any black community and see this anger, this this abuse perpetrated on children rampantly. It's nothing that's new, but what I'm saying is, when we raise kids in this environment without their fathers, with angry mothers that are frustrated because they have to raise children by themselves without help, and then are relying on the government most times to help pay for these children, it then becomes a cycle of violence that is a fire, a raging tornado of a fire that cannot be quelled, cannot be quenched, because it continually feeds upon the lives that are delivered into it. So we have this maelstrom careening out of control. And all we do is we continue to feed it. So with this out of wedlock rate that we have, and the single parent problem, the single mother problem, we have a cycle of violence, a cycle of anger, a cycle of poverty. Because yes, single motherhood is the single most efficient qualifier for poverty. It's the one guarantee. Well, not the one guarantee, but it's the number one guarantee that a person will be poor, that a family will be poor. And what you need to realize is you can't continue to put yourselves in this position. We can't continue to put ourselves in this position. We need to get back to the nuclear family. We need to stop hitting our kids. And not just black people, but people in general. We need to stop being aggressive with our children because that aggression plays out in other places. This is why you have a lot of black mob violence. That's why you have a lot of black people in prison. This is why people are scared of black people. This is why we think we are targets, or we've been made targets. And every time something happens, it's like we didn't do nothing. The first thing we holler. But the mothers and the fathers and the parents don't take responsibility for how they raised their children, lying to themselves that they've done a good job, that their children are great, and you get this narrative that nothing's wrong in the black community, that it's everybody else causing the problem, that it's police attacking us, that it's white people that are racist. But if it's one thing I understand is that perception is everything. And let me tell you, the way people actually perceive us is nothing like we perceive ourselves. And I'm sick of people apologizing, condoning, excusing this behavior in our communities when there are ways that it can be stopped. I'll probably talk more about this and bring some actual stats, but you can look it up. You can look up violence against children. Google it. You can look up how that affects children growing up. You can look up levels of poverty and how poverty affects children growing up. You can look up single motherhood and how that affects children growing up. Just Google all of this. It's nothing new. The information is out there, and people need to look into it. I'm telling you. If you want to save our culture, if you want to make it better, want to make your lives better, please start with the way you treat your children. You want to give your children the best. And if you can't raise your children with a father in the household, then you shouldn't be having sex. You shouldn't be even in the situation where you could get pregnant, because that's abuse in itself, bringing a child into this world as a single parent, knowing that there's almost a guarantee that that child will grow up poor and will have a bad life because of it. This is the Black Lex Luthor signing off.